would like the ship to go. Now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to No Longer a Library. This is kind of like the Heartbreak Hotel, because, oh my God, these two chapters 13 and 14, you know, some fun in 13, but 14 is heartbreak once again for Mr. Sisko, unfortunately. And like always, I have none other than Jonathan Shorts to talk these two chapters out with me, man. How are you doing?
I am doing good, man, and I love that episode title sums up perfectly, as you said. That's just what's going on in these two chapters. Man, you know, you would think during the time of the Federation, he wouldn't be dealing with as much heartbreak, but man, Mr. Sisko has gone through it in his early years.
Yeah, man, I'm like, can this dude catch a break? And of course, we're here to talk about the autobiography of Benjamin Sisko, written by Derek Tyler Attico, who gave us a very gracious shout out on Twitter. So we really appreciate that. It was cool to see him chiming in on our work here. So
Yes.
It's been fun to read through his, and I'm glad that I'm glad we're having so much fun with it, and glad some people are starting to tune in a little bit.
And I know we've said it many times, but Mr. Attico, touche, sir, or whatever, like, just great job, man. I love this book. I love the writing. I love the plot and how it's developing. Like, it's been a while since I've read a book that has kept me so involved the entire time. Like, believe it or not, these two chapters, I sit down on my couch and I read them with the TV going, my wife's on the phone in another room, the dogs are barking, I'm cooking, and I was still able to focus in on this book and enjoy it and like tune all of that out. So To me, that says a lot about the quality of the writing. So good job, Mr. Attico.
Indeed. Once again, a story told by Benjamin Sisko, written by Jake, written by Derek Tyler Attico. Inception all around here. But yeah, getting into chapter 13, everybody's back at the academy and they have these situations that happen apparently randomly, which they call crisis protocols. How did you feel about the way this was depicted in chapter 13?
I liked it. I don't have a complaint. It was hard to kind of put yourself in the situation because you got so many things to add to it to draw a picture, right? Like I've kind of in my head, I'm looking at it as, you know, kind of what it's describing, like an auditorium. You remember the Singer Theater here in Hattiesburg?
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay. So I just kept picturing that, but kind of more elevated, like the seats more elevated going backwards. But all that being said, like I'm shocked that Starfleet Academy would do something like this in a setting like that. Like, to me, that's just a setup for a lot of injury.
Yes. I can see it already. Students going crazy, running around with their head like a chicken with their heads cut off, bumping into each other. Chaos ensues. But it's a test that they do yearly. And interesting thing about this is that when this occurs, all rank falls away. You don't use names. It is all about coming together to try to get out of said situation.
What do you think? Just as kind of off topic, or whatever you want to call it. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, why would not using names be important?
I didn't necessarily understand that portion as well. I did get the rank part. Maybe
Right.
you associate names with rank, so that's why they said both. Because if you're, for instance, we got the perfect example of it in this chapter where we have, fourth year students working with a freshman to work through the problem. You know, they're the only kind of three that kind of work together. So maybe that's the reasoning for it, because if you don't know a name associated with a rank, you probably, would respond differently.
That's kind of where I was trying, more or less leaning towards. It was not, helpful in an actual emergency situation. It was more helpful in the training scenario. The reason I say that, because you've seen many times in Star Trek when a member of Starfleet is captured or, held hostage and they're asked, being interrogated, they usually only respond with name, rank, and like their numbers. Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
Captain Benjamin Sisko, Starfleet, blah, 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 Alpha Beta 32. So I'm like, okay, if that's the normal standard operating procedure, if you're captured, why would an emergency situation, would that be important? But like you said, possibly in this situation, you're trying to let the cream rise to the top and, not based on rank.
And also we have plenty examples of when you have a group of officers or a group of Starfleet officers, when they get in a situation, whether intentional or not, sometimes the rank does fall to the wayside and they have to kind of think differently. As they're marooned in some situation for an extended amount of time, some people break rank.
Right.
Some people do their own thing. So I don't know how that exactly plays into that in this chapter, but I can see it being like a valuable lesson to be like, okay, if something does happen, sometimes you kind of have to value everybody's opinion equally, no matter what your rank is. So I do like that aspect of it as well.
In your first read, as you're reading the first part of this, I was curious, what was your assumption? Did you assume training exercise or did you assume actual emergency?
Honestly, I did think we may have been going into, some ish done hit the fan. We're going to have to fight our way out of it, which would be really cool, actually. I would have loved to have seen that. And honestly, in my mind, I immediately went to conspiracy. Like, are we going to see the events of conspiracy play out in this book? Which it may have been, it obviously was a little bit too late.
Right.
But it would have been cool to see some story like that played out, seeing it from a different point of view in this book. I thought would have been really, really cool.
My original thoughts were this was a training exercise, right? Like we're at Starfleet Academy and, what's the chances at Starfleet Academy, like everything going out? Like I get maybe the power, but the fact that their tricorders and like all of that went out tells me this was planned. But again, kudos to the writer because he kept it going long enough for me to start doubting my original thoughts, right? Yeah. Like when the beam out started to happen and panic ensues and now people are climbing over each other and Sisko, I was expecting, my first thought was training exercise. Sisko is going to immediately take command and save everybody. And the longer we read, the longer I realized this is not happening. Sisko is not taking command. So if that's not the plot, then maybe this is actual emergency. So it went for a while, really until we found out it wasn't, that I got to the point where I just thought this was actual emergency.
Yeah, it was also really cool to see, some of that command experience from working in the kitchen, building the ship, and, returning from the outpost to headquarters, to Academy headquarters, where he's like, everybody turn off your comm badges. They're tracking those to beam us out. So yeah, we see a little bit of him starting to take that leadership role. But what was also really, really cool is to see this, freshman cadet kind of gravitate towards that and they work together, which, how soon did you know who this cadet was that was working with Benjamin in this scenario?
Oh, well, first off, just step back 1 second and just, shout out to Enterprise, because we did get a mention of the Xindi attack on Earth, which is one of the very few attacks that's ever happened in Earth that was successful. Yes. So, and the fact that now we learn that they made an entire training exercise about this at Starfleet Academy. So kudos to him on that. To answer your question, again, credit to the writer, man, because all the clues were there for us to come up with that, but we did not know it until right before he said it. Right? Like the clues are there. Like he pulled something off of his face that interacted with the electronic device, and he said maybe he was blind. And you know what my first thought was? Maybe some kind of dang. What do you call Commander Shran? What was his people?
Oh, Andorian?
Andorians. Because, you know, they have the blind ones that lived in the cold area. That
like Himmer.
Yeah, like Himmer. Yeah. Like, that was my first thought. But it's like, what could he have pulled off of himself that would react with... And then he threw in something about bioelectronics or something not working. So that kind of threw me for a loop there. Yeah. But no, I did not assume it was Geordi.
You know what? When they said that he was a freshman, and then I honestly, I started to gravitate toward it being Geordi. I'm like, oh,
really?
Wait, they're not going to do it, are they? And as soon as he took the thing off his eyes and put it, you know, used it with the tricorder, and they're using her comm badges to try to actually forcefully make these comm badges send out a distress signal, but activating them so they would be beamed to the exact location of whoever's doing all this and send out the distress signal so we'll know where it's coming from. That kind of was their plan. But once he started putting all of that together, I was like, oh, this has to be a brilliant engineer, first of all. But the taking the thing off your face kind of got me. I like, oh, this is probably Geordi, and that would be so cool. And it was. So
kudos to you, sir, because Attico had me all thrown off. I did not. And, you know, TNG is like my first Star Trek experience, right? And I've watched that a lot. And Geordi, I'm always partial to the engineers. And I've always loved Geordi. And, like, it was, again, like I said, it was so in your face, the details, that I really should have got it, but I didn't. And it makes me want to go back and watch the episode where we kind of had that TNG DS9 crossover. Because I know Geordi spent some time on DS9, and I want to go back and see if he mentioned in the conversations that he had ever met Sisko before.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I need to go back. It had to be Emissary, I believe. Did Geordi and Sisko cross paths in that episode? Maybe, but I don't think they did.
I don't remember.
So cool. It would have been so cool.
Now, what also would have been cool, and I don't know the timing of this, if it would have been O'Brien.
I was thinking that as well. Man. That would have been really cool. But we know O'Brien is enlisted.
Right.
Which mean he... Go ahead.
Well, I mean, he did take some Starfleet courses.
True, but do enlisted attend Academy?
No, I guess not. Yeah, true, because he wasn't an engineer anyway. He was fighting, and he just became the engineer and got better. So I guess wishful thinking, man. Wishful thinking.
Yeah, but that would have been so cool. But just an excellent chapter. I really didn't expect Geordi to be in this book, but once I got to, you know, the realization that it was him, I thought, oh man, Geordi, Benjamin, and Susanna all working together. I thought that was so freaking cool, man.
Absolutely. I did love this. And I love the fact of, you know, we kind of had Sisko in a split moment because, you know, he has some PTSD about transporters.
Yes.
And, you know, he made that kind of comment like, you know, the thing that we've taken for granted that helps us seamlessly move around is now the thing that's causing us distress right now. So, and I'm sure it's twice as bad for him because he's thinking, man, if they beam me out and like in the wrong place, I might fall off a truck.
Hey, bro, after his experience, he should be a transporter expert. He should know them in and out, man, because oh my God.
Right.
And then at the end of the chapter, we get into Benjamin talking directly to Jake again about, you know.
Well, before you get into that, I'm sorry to keep interrupting you. I really enjoyed this chapter. I do want to give some credit to this chapter for explaining something that we've all in the back of our mind just said, you know, that's one of those things. So in Trek, every time our characters are in a situation where they don't have the technology they need, somehow that freaking comm badge is turned into something that makes something, that does something. And I'm like, how are you doing this with a comm badge and how do you know it? And, you know, they stuck in here a part like all comm badges were designed for to be useful in an emergency situation by just adjusting a few switches, which now you and I know technologically that's probably almost impossible. But at least there's a brief explanation. So I'm sorry to interrupt for that, but I just thought that was important.
So cool. I mean, having the knowledge to know that they're trained for this. We, like you said, we've seen it so many times of, oh, give me your comm badge, and they just take the little metal thing and do a few flicks, and then it's some magical device that they can protect somebody way away or use it for some other weird thing. But it was so cool to know that, okay, if they're trained to use it that way, so it's no big deal really when they do it, albeit cool, but it's no real big deal.
No, but like you said, I'm just glad that that was thrown in there. And whether that was ever the intent of Roddenberry in the early aughts of Trek, you know, that was kind of what was in the back of mine or not. I'm just glad that that kind of filled a plot hole, I guess you would call it, in the rest of Trek. So,
yeah, no doubt. And again, let's get into the end of the chapter where Benjamin is talking to Jake once again. And this chapter sets it up where he's demonstrating the value of teamwork, and he kind of iterates that he wants that for Jake, you know, mentioning that being a writer is sort of a solitary, you're all by yourself in a corner type thing. And he's saying, like, whatever you do as a writer, whether it be, you know, working for some newspaper or some organization, you need a tribe. So he doesn't want him to have that isolated experience being a writer. He wants him to find a team.
Yes, and that's to me the best advice he could have given him, because I mean throughout DS9 we've always seen it's always a, you know, I want you to go to Starfleet because basically that's what I've done and I think it's the best for you, but never has he said it in this way, like why he thinks is best for him. So I'm glad that he had an opportunity to tell Jake that.
Which I'm going to go back to Mr. Attico. Honestly, I don't know much about Mr. Attico other than, you know, when I first got this book and starting following him on Twitter and seeing what shenanigans he gets into. But, you know, he teamed up with this group named the Sci-Fi Sisters, and he went to the Las Vegas Star Trek convention this past summer.
Nice.
So it was cool seeing him do a similar thing as he's telling Jake in his book, you know, finding his tribe with the Sci-Fi Sisters, going to these conventions. So I found that kind of on the nose here is that's what Mr. Attico is really doing. So that's a cool thing.
Yeah. And what I gathered from this particular chapter, I took two kind of life lessons, one from each chapter. And this chapter, I kind of took a life lesson from it as, and we all talk about it, like, you know, the Star Trek is like an example of what we could be as a world, as a people, which, you know, we all feel like that's probably just a little far out of reach than we'll ever get to. But this kind of took it to a different level of saying, you know, we don't have to exactly be that, right? Mm-hmm. But like, you don't, and that's kind of what he's telling Jake, like, you don't have to be Starfleet to get the value out of Starfleet. And the same thing as we as humans, we don't have to be Star Trek to get the value out of Star Trek. Like, it is just something common. He mentioned it as, you know, even though it was Starfleet, people were still acting irrationally. People were still losing their mind. There were still arguments being had. But the whole goal was, can we come together regardless of rank, regardless of whatever the differences are? Can we agree long enough to get something done? And can we, you know, that, and just those experiences and dealing, you know, he mentioned earlier in the chapter where, you know, every time that another species came to the academy, they would add on another wing or something, some accommodations to address, you know, whatever their needs are. You know, we as a people, we don't really do that. And will we ever get to the point where we build entire new buildings to satisfy one different type of person? Probably not. But Starfleet says, hey, we should at least consider the differences instead of fight the differences. So anyway, all of that, I'm preaching now, but
no, I mean, I agree 100% with you. And it's these, you know, and I think for a lot of people who really love Star Trek, of course, it's about the technology is cool, but also, you know, in the midst of all these stories, it's kind of like the ideas of togetherness that is that really possible for people to be that together, be on board with each other that much? And he even mentions that Jake, he's talking about the institution can be a place of refuge, you know,
Right.
for people who seek out help, who seek out kindness and help. And, you know, a place to pursue your dreams. And that's all the stuff we come to Star Trek for.
Absolutely.
That's part of that utopian idea.
Absolutely.
Oh, man. Time for Heartbreak Hotel. Let's get into chapter 14, man. Oh, boy. This one is a doozy, and it did not go where I thought it was going at all. We start the chapter speaking of Benjamin getting ready for the Kobayashi Maru test, and he has jitters. He has nerves. He's getting messages, you know, on his comm badge. People are trying to get in touch with him. He doesn't really know what's going on because today is one of the most important days of his life, is to get ready and execute the Kobayashi Maru. And wow. You know, sometimes you get a knock on your door and you see the person at the door and you just know it's some bad news, man.
Yes.
You know it can't be good. So at his door is not only Admiral Paris, but also JJ. And he finds out that his mother has passed. What do you think about this chapter, man?
You know, first, before we dive into the depths of the heartbreak, can I just say, I keep forgetting how much time is passing by. So, you know, the Admiral standing there with JJ, and in my head, I'm thinking JJ's here to visit. She's going to run and grab Ben's leg and hold on to him because she's still a 5-year-old child, right? It didn't dawn on me that JJ is probably, 16, 17 at this point?
Yeah, I would assume.
Yeah,
definitely.
So that kind of threw me. That kind of hid the fact, like I didn't think it was bad news, right? I didn't think it was bad news at the point. I just thought, you know, mom and dad is down the hall. They're coming to visit. It's a surprise visit to prepare you for the Kobayashi Maru, like to calm your nerves. And, you know, JJ was just there first because that would be a great surprise. Then when she looked up with tears in her eyes, like it all hit me. I was like, oh man, this is the message or the thing the worst thing that could happen for him right now. This is what's happening. We all knew exactly what it was, right? Like it was mom, like, cause we know his father survives, obviously. And then it's just the way she said it, mom's gone.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't imagine, man. And you're about to prepare one of the most difficult situations in your life to face them, and then you're hit with this and the decisions that goes through his head at that point. And yeah, I can't imagine what he went through with that.
Yeah, it's interesting what his father does in this situation. You know, a lot of people say when you have a tragedy in your life, sometimes it's better to just dive into your work and, you know, keep your head down. You know, which I wouldn't say is a good thing. You need to talk about it, but that's what his dad does in the situation. He goes straight to the kitchen, is intent on opening the restaurant that night, and buries himself in his work.
Mm-hmm.
And they even go on to say that because his mother had a stroke and has pretty much been eating, you know, normal food, non-synthesized food, her whole life, that maybe that contributed to the stroke. You know, this is Southern soul food that she been eating now.
Right.
We know the problem there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got about 150 pounds to tell you what that.
But they're saying this could have contributed to her death. You know, it's always interesting in Star Trek because it's this weird thing of where we have so much technology and we've seen miracles work. We've seen legs replaced. We've seen hearts replaced. And these people go on and live lives as if they're normal. But then we have this simple thing like this of a stroke and there's nothing they can do. So that may be the part that got me the most. There was nothing they could do. You know, it could have been a timing thing. Whatever it was, they weren't able to save her. So I always find that disappointing when something like that happens, when you know there's so much technology and so much can be done.
you know, that never, reading this, that never crossed my mind. And just now you're saying it, now I'm thinking back on it like, wait a minute, guys. All the things we can do, we couldn't fix this.
Yeah.
Like, we couldn't fix this, but, you know, and I digress from that. I get it. Maybe there's not, I mean, of course, we'll never be able to do everything. But I'm going to tell you what, when I told you there was a life lesson in each chapter that I kind of could pull from these. In this chapter, it was the whole moving too fast, technology beneficial or not type situation. And I kind of reflected, I was reading through this. You know, we had the whole, and I don't want to go politics on it, but, you know, we had the whole pandemic come along, and then we had this vaccine come along, and not saying go for it or not for it, but what we did see was such a hesitation because of a new vaccine that hadn't been tested. And then there's a lot of other vaccines being produced from this and a lot of other advancements in medical technology. But we have also a growing part of the population that's absolutely against the vaccines and the new vaccines. But what this also has come to do is turn them away from the proven vaccines we have to work. And I get it, right? Yeah. I get it. You know, there's a lot to be said about the COVID vaccine, the efficacy of it and all of that. Like, there's some questions. I get that. But you kind of forces a decision for yourself. Like, will I really be better off without all of the technology? Like, is that really better for me? Because you think back, okay, 80 years ago, we didn't have all of this and people lived fine. And there's some debate about the average lifespan and all that. But, like, where do you draw that line on too much technology? Like, relying too much on technology could be a detriment to your health. Where is that line, right? I think there is a line. You know, we have stories every day of people that take every freaking medicine they can come up with. They do everything, and it causes more trouble in the long run. But also, we got to take advantage of some, right? Like, that's kind of where my thoughts went.
Well, especially in the case we talk about the Sisko family being basically Luddites. The fact that how the grandfather died in the beginnings of this book, how the grandfather died. Right. He didn't have a way to contact anybody.
Right.
So yeah, it's always a balance, and I think that is the fact that they didn't at first use technology as much was such a staple of the Sisko family. This death is kind of like just par for the course for the family. Benjamin even makes a statement of the father being so upset that maybe something he did as a cook, you know, the family's all about food, could have contributed to his wife's death, which I found, oh man, he's hitting us with Jennifer right here. He's hitting us with Jennifer because she was on his ship when they were attacked and she died. So kind of due to his work, I think this is a direct correlation to that. But yeah, just really, really a lot of heartbreak right there, man.
Very much so. And just to defend Papa Sisko, you know, I've worked in the kitchen for many, many years. And when you cook for so long, especially in a commercial kitchen, it gets to become more of it's something, you know, when you're dealing with something, sometimes you need to be active. You need to do something that takes your mind off of everything else. And that's one of those things. When you're in the kitchen cooking and you've got a lot going on, like, you have no time to think about anything else. And I feel like that was kind of his escape.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I love the fact that Benjamin just jumps in and and he goes back to I think we got this in that episode, that season 7 episode. These clams aren't going to clean themselves.
Yeah.
So I love that he threw that in there.
Yes.
Moving forward just a little bit, I mean, Benjamin goes to his old room and, you know, he's kind of dealing with it his own way. And JJ comes up and says that Mom has his last gift for you, which was the Maya Angelou book that we referenced earlier in this book, where he was reading poems. And he comes back to that as a gift that she's given him. And as he turns to, I guess, his favorite poem in the book, she has left a note for him saying, "Do big things, Ben. Do big things." Which you know, as sad as it is, it's nice to get that one last message from her, and also the fact that she's the one that introduced their family to technology. She was the one who kind of would allow, you know, him to go to Starfleet, would introduce him to ships and the ideas of Starfleet and technology, you know, bringing their family a little bit forward into the current century they're in. So yeah, she's in a lot of ways his inspiration for even being in Starfleet. So just makes it even more sad. And he's kind of resigned to the fact that I don't want to do that. You know, I'm not going back.
Right.
But this is the thing that pushes him forward.
Yeah, and that's just, I mean, her final message, again, is that last push he needed. Like, right when he needed mom came through, even after death, right? Yeah. And he just decided to hang it up. And I appreciate JJ also being that voice of reason of like, this is not the right decision for you. Yeah. So, and then I don't know, intuition, like he said, she didn't have the look in her eyes that she knew what the package was, but I feel like she had the intuition that whatever mom left him would help change his mind. Yeah, was certainly what he needed. So let's get into kind of how we started the chapter. Mr. Attico book ends the chapter with Ben going back and taking on the Kobayashi Maru. So seemingly things are going fine, but then everything kind of goes to hell in the handbasket, as it does with Kobayashi Maru. Never get too happy because it's going to end.
As we very well may know, you remember when we played Star Trek Bridge Crew?
Yes.
And we took Kobayashi Maru. Oh, shit. And we got annihilated. I wish I could find that video. We pretty much got annihilated. But it was fun nonetheless. But, you know, Admiral Paris makes a pretty interesting comment talking about, you know, other than Kirk, which we know how he beat the Kobayashi Maru, but no one, you know, the real goal is to go the longest. It's not about beating it. and Benjamin was kind of resigned to that. It kind of hits me with that logic that Benjamin always has about tactical logic about a situation, and he kind of deploys it here.
Absolutely.
Like he knew he wasn't going to beat it. He's just trying to go as long as he could.
Like, and it kind of goes back to the whole, I always bring this up. It's just, you know, the first time Benjamin interacts with Q and they're in the boxing ring, and like Benjamin's he's just a no nonsense type of guy. Like he doesn't have time for all these tricks and maneuvers, and like he's just gonna get it done. He's gonna do the best he can to get it done the way it needs to be done, and that's it. And that's what I felt like he did here. And he mentioned, you know, he wasn't paying attention to time. He really couldn't care about the time. He was doing the job the best he could do it. And in classic Ben Sisko fashion, Ben just being Ben is better than 50% better than anyone else on their best day. Yeah. So yeah, that was just kind of classic Benjamin Sisko. I didn't expect him to do anything different. I expected that situation. And, you know, if you would have asked me to write a summation of how that would have gone, I probably would have said he'll probably last longer than mostly anybody will, just off of his talent, his logic, and his drive, and his care about his people. But if you'd asked me, you think Benjamin can figure out a way to cheat it or beat it, or no, because that's not him. He knows that's not the goal.
Yeah, and he makes a comment on how realistic the holodeck is. Sans a few items, he could tell the difference, but mostly he said it was amazing. But yeah, I love what he says to Admiral Paris at the end. He says, I understand and accept some situations are wildly disproportionate, but if you don't give up, if you stay in the fight for as long as you can, regardless of the odds, sometimes big things can happen. So yay for you, Mr. Sisko.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's kind of it, unless you have any other comments or thoughts about these two chapters, which, you know, I chapters 13 and 14, I short, but a lot of good nuggets within.
Yes, and I'm just interested. I know you and I kind of jumped ahead a while back and looked at the pictures, but in these two chapters, we get kind of through the pictures of the book illustrations, and I kind of went through them again. You get to see the Maya Angelou book and his baseball card and a letter from Pulaski, which I don't remember us looking at that before. I tried to read a little bit of it. And I think she says she stopped by her father's restaurant and something about him being an engineer. I couldn't really make it out. But I was just curious, any of our listeners, you want to comment and let us know, what did you think about the illustrations? Did you find any nuggets in it that we may have missed?
Yeah, and I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention at least James Darren, the actor who played Vic Fontaine, recently passed away.
Yes.
So such a sad thing, but he's in a lot of my favorite episodes of DS9.
And he's in one of the ones that made, a couple of them that kind of brought tears to my eyes.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's, I think he was that song that they were doing at the final episode of DS9 with his. So, yeah.
Yeah, man.
That's rough.
Good stuff. Go back and watch it, because give this man all. He's gone, but he will forever live on.
Absolutely.
In our hearts, definitely, because his episodes are some of the most iconic. So, hearts and minds to his family. Shout out to James Darren, man. You were great. Absolutely. All right, and with that, we're gonna wrap things up. Hopefully, we'll get to chapters 15 and 16. Well, 15 to 16 here pretty soon.
That's it.
Like I said, these chapters were short, but obviously we've been talking for like 40 minutes, so good stuff there within. So really enjoyed it. John, do you have anything you want to shout out or talk about before we kind of end things for today?
No, man, that's it. Go back and watch the James Darren episodes of DS9. I think will be a great place to go over the next couple of weeks. So other than that, man, no.
Cool beans, man. And with that, thanks to each and every one of you guys for listening in. We really appreciate it. So until next time.
When somebody loves you, it's no good unless he loves you. Oh.